Welcome back to This Is How We Create. I'm Martine Severin, your host. Today, I want to tell you about an artist who stitches her son's Superman pajamas directly onto canvas because this country won't let him be super, black, and young all at once. Today, we're joined by such an artist. Lex Marie makes art from the uncomfortable truth that Black children in America are denied the luxury of innocence. She takes evidence from her son Aiden's outgrown clothes, salvaged from underfunded public schools, the detritus of childhood under siege, and transform all of that into confrontation disguised as portraiture. So here's what you need to know. Lex Marie is a single mother finishing her MFA at American University while her work hangs in museums. She paints after she drops her son off at school and often when her son goes to bed. She learned early working at the Driscoll Center that Black art history is American history refusing to be erased. Now she's adding her own chapter, one reclaimed superhero costume at a time. The art world loves to fetishize struggle, and I love it when artists such as Lex Marie refuse that narrative. Yes, she paints her sons centered and stoic against vibrant backgrounds, but so did many other artists, such as Imogen Cunningham. Yes, she addresses the school to prison pipeline and adultification bias. And you know what? I'm so inspired by her work as a mother, as she documents the personal. And as you know, many of us, we document, and our art begins with the personal. Today, Lex Marie discusses the exhausting mathematics of being mother artist and about how many hours of sleep equals one painting. How much innocence can you preserve in acrylic and thread, and why making the personal political isn't a choice when your personal has always been politicized. This is how we create when America is allergic to Black joy and when you're determined to document it anyway. Lex Marie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. That was a beautiful introduction.
Okay. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about you growing up in the Washington, D.C. area. So you talk about in the past about interviews that you've done about how you were always creative and that you've always remembered drawing or doing art one way or another. And so much so that you mentioned that you've had an art teacher who retained some of your own work. Can you talk to us about the moment when you realized that your viewpoint was a little bit different than other people's viewpoint?
What a good question. I would say my interest in art, I realized that that was different than other kids' interest in art early on. And that would probably be middle school when I took my first painting class. It's not until I became a mother and my art changed drastically that I realized that my viewpoint wasn't just my own, but it was a new viewpoint to, I think, arts and seeing certain art on museum and gallery walls.
And how did that happen for you? Do you have a story that you can tell us when it just started dawning on you?
I would say no, I mean, it's just motherhood. Prior to that, I would do commissions. I knew that I could draw. I knew that I could look at something and paint it, but I didn't know what story I wanted to tell. No personal story anyway. And when I became a mother, I was just so inspired by my son. And I felt that my story, our story, was important enough to be on museum walls and to be on gallery walls. So
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you have accomplished so much. You've had solo shows, your work has been in museum collections, but you chose to go back to school. Can you tell me a little bit about why, as an established artist, or maybe you don't consider yourself an established artist, I don't know, but how can you talk to us about your decision to go for an MFA and undergo academic critique while simultaneously being collected by those same institutions?
It's for exactly what you said, the academic critique. When I got my bachelor's from University of Maryland, I was just painting. I just was painting because I knew that I loved painting, but I never had any type of formal critique. My career changed a bit during COVID when I was at home and I would listen to artist talks all the time and study artists and study art, but I never got the feedback, I don't know, from an academic standpoint. And I really wanted that because I think my art is great. But I knew that there's bigger things and there's greater, it could be better. I digest so much art all the time. And I know that there are levels to the art world and being an artist. And I just want to be the best artist I can be. So I love learning and I love challenging myself.
Well, you talked about how motherhood changed you. And as I was prepping for this interview, I was just like, oh gosh, I wonder when did she realize that? Well, I'll ask you the question. When did you realize that your son was both your muse and also your inspiration and your material?
I think that looking it's crazy. I'll look at pictures of him while he's, like, right next to me, and I'm just like, "He's just so cute." He's so cute, and that's how, like, the beginning of the portraits of him started. I mean, we were stuck in the house during COVID, so he was my only model. I mean, I just spent so much time with him that I needed someone to paint, and it just felt right to be a mother painting her son, and then as far as the material goes, I like to use what's around me. So kids grow so fast, and before he was one, every month he would grow out of clothes, and now every year or season he grows out of clothes. So I have this multitude of material that I'm able to use every season and repurpose. So that was a part of it as well.
I sympathize with you. I remember one year we actually not even one year, this happens every year, but I think my son was around 8. So it was the first year I didn't go to Target to buy school uniforms. I went to like a fancier place and I spent so much money, Lex. Oh my God. I still went. So he went into school in late August. By November, he had outgrown everything. Everything. There was nothing that fit, and it was so gutting. And so to that point of you using what's around you, how do you decide which clothing gets immortality and which, gets passed on to relatives or even goes to Goodwill or thrift store?
I think the clothes and costumes I've used thus far have been a big part of his growing up. Spider-Man was just a huge part of his early childhood. He's had, I mean, tons of costumes and pajamas and shirts of Spider-Man. And I really wanted to archive even that his life as he's getting older. And also I use his uniforms he's in a DC public school and he wears these khaki pants and this black polo shirt, and it's just such a symbol of a part of where he is right now in life. It's a symbol of a representation of so many kids in DC and I guess across the country as well who wear the assembly uniform, and it felt important. And I talk about education a lot, so it felt very fitting to begin using his uniforms in my work.
So he's your inspiration. How are you his inspiration? Does he create using you as his muse by chance?
Lately he hasn't been as interested in creating art with me, unfortunately. He's much more into sports, but there have been times that we have created together that I've enjoyed. We've had a few collaborations. We've even had his artwork up in a gallery show before, so that was nice. But I think the inspiration comes from seeing me live out my dreams and do what I love, and he really can understand that he can do whatever he wants to do and be whoever he wants to be.
Well, it's so beautiful to see your journey, and there are these absolutely, oh my goodness, photos of you of with your son directly after giving birth, and his like wrinkled skin and just really, really beautiful, and then the look on your face as well. I guess one of the things that I am thinking about is how do you balance between using your son as inspiration and what tends to be really intimate. Because I think, one of the reasons why I'm asking is because we only see what we see. And so we think what we see is everything in one person's life. Whereas, we know that's not true. So, how do you do that balance between inspiration, shows, as well as all the intimate moments in your life?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly like boundaries and things that I don't show. It's interesting because, I haven't painted in a while. I actually moved to more conceptual work, still talking about him, still very much about raising him, but I've moved away from using his face in the actual artwork. And it was a transition from early childhood to school age kid is that's when the change was because for the first 4 or 5 years of his life it's just me just enjoying being his mother. He's just so happy and full of wonder, and he still is, but my experience with raising him got a bit more intense when he started to go to school and he's getting older, and now I'm faced with the ideas of adultification and just kind of seeing young children go through so many things that look exactly like him. And I had to kind of separate myself a little bit in the sense that I didn't want to use his face when I'm talking about as serious issues as I'm talking about. But I'm still using his experience.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how you approach your work in terms of an idea that comes to you or something that you've observed both in your life and in his life, in his school life, and the process that it takes from having that idea, writing about it, doodling, however you do it, to when it actually hangs up in a museum? Can you walk us through how you go about that journey?
So I have so many feelings. I have big feelings. And once I'm thinking about something, once something bothers me, I almost have to create artwork in order for me to process it and get past it. So sometimes the material is there first, sometimes the idea is there first, and I have to find the right material to get the idea across. But usually there's is a feeling, and I'm confronted with a challenge about raising a Black boy in America, usually. And with this feeling, I think of a material, or I go to thrift stores often, or I have a material laying around my studio that's been there for years. And I would combine most the idea with the material in order to speak to these specific situations.
Do you journal about it? Do you write about it? Do you create some kind of like a storyboard? How do you process and digest all of those feelings and then transmit that to the work?
I write, but not like writing in the sense of like sentences. I just write down ideas. If I wake up in the morning and I think of something, if I have a feeling, I'll just quickly write something in my journal or my sketchbook. But I don't sketch much, which is interesting. I would like to sketch more and I would like to write more as well. But I have like I'll just write down a material. I'll think of that as like symbolic of his childhood. I'll write down hospital blankets. I'll write down pacifiers. I'll write down today he asked me what the N word is, like I would just write down moments that are like I are just important moments to me where I feel like I need to address these things in order in my artwork.
I am really curious as to when and how artists know when they are done with a piece. What does done feel like to you?
So done to me is definitely a feeling. It's a feeling of if I do anything else, I will mess up this piece. And it's also a feeling of I need to get this piece out of my face right now. I feel like I got everything I needed, whether that be the physical aspect of it, the emotional aspect of it. I got it all out of me and into the work, and I want it elsewhere. I actually don't like to look at my art too long after I finish it.
One of the questions that I often think about with artists as they produce their work and then they get it, well, your work in magazines as well as on walls, how have you gone about cultivating relationships in order to enter into that world of creating and then being able to sell your work? Because there is that part of it that comes in, which is we sell our work. How does that work for you in terms of cultivating relationships so that your work can go into loving hands?
Relationships are everything. And that was a learning process for me, whether it be relationships with artists, curators, galleries, collectors. It took me a while to warm up to that because I at first I kind of just like creating my work and not building relationships. I just wanted to create. I have learned to love it, having conversation with artists. Often my collectors, they want to get to know me. They want to spend some time with me and be in conversation with me prior to purchasing the work because not only do they want to love the work, they want to like love the artist as well and make sure, that I am serious about my work and also just a good person, just they want to know the story. When they purchase a piece, they ask for like little write-ups of the work so they can speak to my work. I don't want my work in storage, in someone's basement. I want it on the wall or on the table or wherever it'll be to start conversations. The work is created to start conversations and to be viewed by the public. So relationships are everything. I show up to other people's art shows, different events, and I learned that when you give that energy out, it's often reciprocated.
What has been the most surprising thing about you in terms of the lessons that you've learned along in this journey? How has this journey been for you? And what are some of the lessons that you've learned that have been really surprising as you're doing your MFA and trying to create work as well?
I guess the fact that it's always going to be a journey, like there's no end point where you know everything or you even know what you're doing, So it's really a lifelong process. And I had to learn that because I have so many questions like, how do you sustain an art practice? How do you get to showing in certain places? And, when I ask more like older artists, there's never really an answer. It's like everyone has their own journey. There's not one way to go about it. And you just have to you just have to create. And I always say how it's an art unlike other professions. The older you get, the more you create, the better you get, and the more that others appreciate you. So it's a lifelong process. And I think the advice that there's no one way to do it allows me to not box myself in and speaks to why I am continuing to be a multidisciplinary artist, that I don't have to create just one way, that I don't have to just use paint, that I could do whatever I want to do. Absolutely.
That's really beautiful. Oh my gosh. All right. So the next question that I have for you is all about the questions that you're not asked. Because I mean, I'm so aware of going on having these interviews and then going as well on podcasts and being interviewed. Are there some things that people take out of context or questions that people don't ask you that you would like to be asked?
Well, when we started this conversation, you asked if Marie was my last name. And I think no one asked me, why are you Lex Marie? And it's not my full name. It's my first and middle name. It's actually part of my first name and my middle name. And recently I was asked for a show if I could use my full name because it just looks different compared to everyone else on the, exhibition list full name. And it's intentional that I don't use my full name, actually. I was raised by a single mother, but I have my father's last name, who was never a part of my life. And so I kind of wanted to detach myself from that and just kind of create my own identity where whether I mean, because he wasn't a part of my life, and if one day I get married, I just want it to always be Lex Marie. Like Lex Marie created this life. Lex Marie created this work, and nobody else gets credit. So it's not about the art, but that is why I only use Lex Marie for art purposes.
I love that. I love it. Well, Lex Marie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed talking with you and keep your name. Keep it. Hi there. If you're loving the show, would you mind taking a quick second to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite go-to podcast app? While you're at it, subscribe to our Substack newsletter, Creative Matters. You can find the link to subscribe in the show notes. All right, that's all that I have for you today. Bye.